She wasn't anyone special. Her white blouse had faded to a yellowish hue. Her slacks were wrinkled from having no iron, and her rubber sandals were soaked and stained with rainwater. But it was she, on that rainy day, who held up a torn umbrella toward a stranger. "Would you like to share this with me? I'm walking, so I'm in no hurry." The man wore a tailored Italian shirt, his expensive leather shoes drenched in dirty water. He hesitated, then nodded and walked slowly under the small umbrella. No one knew who he was, and even more surprising, the next day, that same girl received a phone call. "We'd like to offer you the position of branch manager." The entire neighborhood buzzed with disbelief. A maid who walked home in the rain, simply for lending her umbrella, was now stepping into a conference room filled with men in suits. But no one realized that small umbrella hadn't just shielded from the rain. It had shielded a destiny that was about to take a sudden turn. Her name was Emily, simple, just like her life. She lived with her grandmother in a cramped rental room at the end of a narrow alley. In the rainy season, the water rose up to the edge of their bed. In the dry season, it got so hot she had to sleep with a damp towel across her forehead. Her mother passed away when she was 8. Her father died in a construction site accident. Emily was raised by the street food her grandmother carried through crowded markets. Trading sweat for rice. Emily wasn't beautiful. At least not by the standards of men in tailored suits who sipped coffee in luxury lounges. Her skin was sun-darkened from working outside. Her hands were rough from laboring too young. The shoes she wore had worn out soles from 2 years ago. But her eyes shone. They held the kind of light only people who survived loss can still carry. And her voice was soft, gentle, like a linen cloth wrapping around the listener's heart. She worked part-time as a server in a small vegetarian diner near the shopping district. Sometimes, she cleaned offices at night to earn extra cash. Her life repeated itself that way, simple, poor, but filled with quiet determination. And then, one rainy day, Emily met him. The umbrella she carried that day belonged to her grandmother, patched 3 times with white thread. When Emily held it over the stranger struggling in the downpour outside the CEO Group building, she didn't think much of it. It was instinct. "Are you all right?" she asked. Seeing him shielding his head with a crumpled contract, he turned around. His white dress shirt was soaked. His sharp, cold face looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne ad. But what made Emily pause was his eyes. It wasn't judgment, just surprise. A flicker of something vulnerable. "Thank you," he said, and the two walked side by side through the intersection. Beneath the tiny, worn umbrella, they didn't ask for each other's names. Just a passing moment in the rain. But to Emily, it was a rare warmth. And to him, it was a strange feeling he couldn't define. His name was Nathan, 34 years old, the youngest CEO of a major real estate group, raised in wealth, trained in the U.S., and once featured on the cover of Forbes Vietnam. But behind the accolades was a childhood full of silence. Nathan lost his mother early. His father, a driven, stern man, believed emotions were weakness. Nathan was raised to be strong, no crying, no failure, trust no one, not even love. To Nathan, everything had a value, including people he had loved, been betrayed, and since then treated emotions like transactions. Women surrounded him, beautiful, brilliant, captivating, but none had ever reached his heart. Nathan lived in a polished world, but he was lonely. Until the day Emily held an umbrella for him. A week later, they met again. Emily was making a delivery to a company office, not realizing it was the communications branch of CEO Group. Nathan exited a meeting room, and their eyes met. She bowed awkwardly, but he smiled. "It's you. The girl with the patched umbrella." Emily blushed, but this time, Nathan approached, asked her name, and invited her for coffee. She declined. He smiled again, for the first time. Not out of arrogance, just curiosity. A man intrigued by a woman unlike anyone he'd ever met. From that moment, they had chance meetings. At the diner, At the bus stop, by a sidewalk tea stall, Nathan began to rearrange his schedule. He didn't know why, but he kept thinking of her eyes each time he returned to the office. And Emily. She found herself waiting for a message, even if she didn't expect much. But life isn't a movie. One morning, a gossip magazine printed a photo of Nathan sitting beside Emily in a small coffee shop, with the headline, "Millionaire CEO dating street food girl?" The buzz exploded. Harsh comments targeted Emily. Snide whispers surrounded Nathan. Is this love, or just the CEO playing with flavors? Was one of the tamer remarks. Nathan was questioned in a board meeting. His closest assistant suggested, just deny it. Say she's a delivery girl you happen to know. That's it. But Nathan didn't respond. Emily remained silent. She didn't blame him. But that night, she sent Nathan a message. If my presence affects your reputation, I'll step back. He didn't reply immediately. He didn't know what to say. For the first time, Nathan felt out of control. Not a CEO. Not a man always holding the upper hand. The following evening, the company held a gala to mark its 10th anniversary. Nathan had to attend. When he stepped onto the stage to a round of applause, he saw her, Emily, standing at the back of the hall, holding her little umbrella. He didn't know why she came. Maybe curiosity. Maybe she missed him. He stepped off stage, meaning to walk toward her, but someone reached him first. His ex-girlfriend, gorgeous, sharp, freshly returned from France. She took his hand, whispered something, then turned and smiled at Emily. It was a smile that made Emily freeze. She turned and walked away. Nathan watched her go, and for the first time, his heart sank. Not because he lost someone, but because he was about to lose the one thing he never knew how to cherish, a woman who was real. The boardroom on the 28th floor of Sterling Corporation felt colder than usual that day. Harsh white light spread across the long oval table where the board members sat, awaiting a major restructuring report. But instead, murmurs filled the room, not about financials, but about something far more unusual. A young woman, the same one once caught on camera holding an umbrella over Nathan Sterling on the street, was now standing in front of them, ready to present her plan for overhauling the northern branch. Emily stood silently in her only office dress, plain, a bit worn, but neatly pressed. Her hair was tied into a modest bun, and her hands, clutching the presentation folder, trembled ever so slightly, but her gaze remained steady. And when she began to speak, her voice silenced the entire room for a few still seconds. Gentlemen, I don't have an MBA. I've never studied at Harvard like most of you, but I grew up in a place where every woman learns to survive, from patching clothes for her mother, to telling whether someone looks at her with pity or with contempt. Some eyebrows furrowed, but others, like Nathan's, couldn't look away. He hadn't expected the girl who once handed him an umbrella saying, "Take it, I don't need it," to now stand tall under the weight of so many judging eyes. Emily finished her presentation, bowed in gratitude, and walked out, only to catch whispers from a group of senior staff by the hallway. That's the girl from the umbrella video, right? Not bad looking in person. Heard Nathan's just playing around. Guys like him don't fall for girls like that. She kept walking, never turned back. But her chest tightened. She didn't cry. Emily had never cried in front of others. But her steps faltered slightly in the corridor, echoing with sneers and sideways glances. That evening, she returned home late. The soles of her worn-out shoes were nearly split open. She sat quietly under the eaves of the boarding house, watching the sky darken with the threat of rain. In her mind, a conversation replayed. The one she had accidentally overheard between Nathan and someone else at the gala the night before. "You're crazy for letting that girl into the company. You plan to turn the boardroom into a joke? It's just a game. I bet she actually thinks she's about to be loved." Her heart stung, not because of the words, but because of who had said them. Nathan. The same Nathan who had invited her into his world. The same Nathan who had laughed with her at a corner cafe as she told stories from her childhood. And now, to him, it was all just a game. The next morning, Emily didn't show up at the office. She sent an email requesting a week of unpaid leave. No one heard from her. No one, except the landlady, who found a short letter and a small suitcase left behind. Meanwhile, Nathan, for the first time in years, felt unsettled by someone's absence. He didn't understand why, not fully, but when he entered the boardroom and saw the empty chair where Emily had sat the day before, something clicked. Her presence hadn't been a test. It had been a light he had ignored. He opened her project file one last time. Between neatly printed pages and data charts, something slipped out, a small, folded piece of paper, a pencil sketch, simple, delicate, a little girl holding an umbrella, standing between two tall buildings, looking toward the sunlight. Beneath the drawing, a tiny handwritten note. Not everyone who carries an umbrella fears the rain. Some are just shielding others. Nathan placed his hand over the page, his mind a blur, his heart louder than reason. This wasn't a game, and she was never just a poor girl easy to manipulate. The next day, the head of human resources came to see Nathan and handed him a light brown envelope. "Emily left this for you," she said. "Only open it when you truly need to understand." Inside was a faded photocopy of an old newspaper article from 2009. Mysterious girl holds umbrella for elderly woman during stroke. Leaves without giving her name. Attached to it was a photo, blurry, taken under heavy rain, of a young girl with soaking wet hair, crouching to shield an unconscious elderly woman with a worn-out umbrella. Nathan froze. The eyes in that photo, he recognized them instantly. It was Emily, and the old woman was the mother of his former boss, the same man who had once told Nathan, "A poor little girl saved my mother's life years ago. I owe her a debt for a lifetime." Nathan's thoughts spiraled back. Emily, carrying boxes in the rain without an umbrella. Emily, quietly offering him her coat when he was soaked. Emily, refusing bonuses with the words, "I don't deserve it." Now, all the things he once dismissed, every moment he had belittled, cut deep like a blade. What he had lost wasn't just a woman. It was a soul who had lived her entire life for others. Nathan let the phone slip from his hand after calling every colleague, friend, driver, anyone who had ever had contact with Emily. No one knew where she was. He stood by the tall window, watching the rain fall over the city skyline. And for the first time, his voice didn't sound like the arrogant CEO of yesterday. It was simply a man, on the edge of losing the one thing that made him feel human. He whispered, barely audible, "Emily, I was wrong. Please, give me one chance to make it right." From that day on, time passed like the soft drizzle tapping against the windowsill. Nathan was no longer himself. Breakfasts grew cold on the table. Board meetings were postponed without reason. And the phone rang endlessly with no one to answer. His personal assistant, once meticulously tracking every meeting on the CEO's calendar, now simply sat quietly, watching the office door remain slightly ajar as Nathan spent hours inside, holding a single piece of paper in his hand. Emily's resignation letter. Simple. Just 2 short lines. But to Nathan, it struck like lightning on a clear day. No one understood why. The girl who once stood smiling under the rain, shielding her boss with a torn umbrella, had now vanished without a word. No accusations, no tears, only silence, and an old umbrella, folded neatly, left on his desk, blank, blank. That night, Nathan returned to his luxurious penthouse. The room had everything except life. City lights reflected off the glass windows, casting the shadow of a man sitting in stillness, untouched wine in hand. On the table lay a confidential HR file, something he had discreetly commissioned. A full report on the girl named Emily. He opened the folder. Page by page, the first document stopped his breath. An emergency blood donation slip from 5 years ago. Donor: Emily Morgan. Recipient: anonymous patient, Nathan's mother. His hands trembled. He turned the next page. There, a grainy hospital surveillance photo captured a small girl, drenched from head to toe, sitting quietly for hours in the emergency room, waiting to sign a voluntary blood donation form for someone she had never even met. Why would she do that? Next page. Emily's high school transcript, straight A's. Full scholarship offer from a top university. Next to it, the rejection letter. Application denied due to lack of permanent residency documentation and financial support. And in the residency records? Her last known address. The crumbling rental behind the old market. The very place Nathan had once stepped into that rainy night. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together, and Nathan couldn't breathe. Blank. Underscore, blank. One final detail broke him. A photograph. The one his mother had always kept by her hospital bed. It showed a small girl, holding a worn-out umbrella, standing in the rain, shielding an elderly woman who was convulsing from low blood sugar. Her hair was soaked, but her eyes, resolute. His mother had once said, "I'm alive today, because an unknown angel pulled me back from the edge." That angel was Emily. Blank. Underscore, blank. The next day, Nathan visited his mother at the family's private care facility. She was weaker now, but her mind remained clear. When he showed her the photo of young Emily, she simply nodded. "That's the girl. She saved me, but when I came to, she was gone. All I remember is, she wore a yellow shirt with a frayed collar, and always held that old umbrella." Nathan knelt beside her and whispered, "Mom, I made a mistake. I let her slip away, because I was blind." His mother held his hand, eyes filled with tears. "If you still have a chance, find her. Don't repeat my mistake. Don't live with regret and no way to make it right." Blank. Underscore, blank. The next morning, Nathan withdrew from all projects, shut down his private office, and handed over all executive duties to his deputy team. He packed one small suitcase, and took with him the old umbrella Emily had left behind. Each day, he visited labor markets, asking for Emily Morgan. He stopped by vocational schools, community centers, even orphanages near where she once lived. But no one had seen her. It was as if she had never existed. Then, fate offered a thread of hope. One afternoon, he wandered into a small public library, a place offering free sewing lessons to underprivileged women. On the wall was a modest frame that read, "Sponsored by the Emily Fund, where every stitch is a piece of healing sewn back together." Nathan stood still. She had quietly become the founder of a charitable fund? Since when? A kind older volunteer gently approached and led him inside. She spoke softly. "She comes here every Saturday morning. Sits quietly by the sewing machine. No one suspects she's the woman who changed so many lives." Nathan sat down, hands trembling. On the table in front of him was an unfinished handkerchief. The stitches were neat and precise. But in the lower left corner, a small line of embroidery stood out, clumsy and heartfelt. "The end of tears is the beginning of hope." Saturday morning, sunlight poured through the wooden window, casting soft reflections on the worn cement floor. In the small room of the center, the hum of sewing machines echoed like a gentle rhythm of breath. At the back table sat Emily, dressed in a simple shirt, her hair tied up, her face calm, just like every other morning. She was finishing the final stitches on a handkerchief she planned to give to a young girl who had just passed her college entrance exam. She didn't know that just a few steps away, a man was standing, his heart racing like the first time he walked on stage to receive his MBA diploma. But this time, it was fear. Fear of loss. Fear of being too late. Fear that, "I'm sorry," might no longer be enough. As Emily stood up to wash her hands, she froze. A familiar silhouette. No suit, no luxury watch. Just a man in an old white shirt, holding a gray umbrella. the one she had once left on his desk. "Emily?" She turned. The shock in her eyes lasted only a second. Then it faded into calmness. As if looking at a stranger, she nodded politely. "Hello. Are you looking for someone to give this handkerchief to?" Nathan stepped forward. Hesitantly, he held out an old handkerchief, embroidered clumsily with crooked stitches, one he had once tried to sew with his mother. "Intended for Emily, but never delivered." His voice trembled. "You still kept the umbrella? And I still kept the handkerchief. But the one thing I couldn't keep was the heart of the girl who saved my mother's life." Emily looked at him for a long time. No tears, only soft-spoken words. "You're not a bad man, Nathan. You've just lived too long in a world where everything has a price. But emotions, love, can never be bought." Nathan nodded. In his eyes, the million-dollar meetings, the titles, the charity events, suddenly meant nothing. "I used to think I did charity to make up for my mistakes. But the truth is, I was just running away. Today, I didn't come here for forgiveness. I came to thank you for not becoming someone like me." Emily let out a soft laugh, not bitter. A laugh so warm, Nathan nearly broke into tears. He held out a letter. "This is the legal transfer of all sponsorship rights from my company to the Emily Fund. And, if you agree, I want to appoint you as the director of the local education branch. Not for prestige, but because no one is more deserving than you." Emily looked at the paper. Quiet, she folded it and placed it gently on the table. Instead of answering, she asked, "Do you remember what you said the first time we met?" Nathan pressed his lips together. His throat tightened. "You said, some people borrow umbrellas and forget to return them. But others borrow kindness to win a game." She looked directly into his eyes, for the first time in all these months. "Today, I'm giving you back everything you once lost. Not your reputation, but a second chance to begin again, as a human being. Blank. Underscore, blank." That afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the trees, the center slowly emptied. Only Emily and Nathan remained, sitting quietly among scattered pieces of unused fabric. Nathan finally spoke. "Have you ever thought about forgiving me?" Emily didn't respond right away. She opened the drawer and took out a small picture frame. Inside was a handwritten letter, his mother's final note, thanking a stranger girl who once saved a fragile mother's life. "Forgiveness," she said softly, "isn't something you give because someone deserves it. It's what you give because you want to live a life free of bitterness." Nathan nodded. He didn't propose. He didn't say, "I love you." He simply reached for her hand, like a man who had once been lost, finally finding his way home. 1 week later, at an international conference on educational equity, a petite woman stepped onto the stage with steady eyes. Emily, now the regional director of the Humanitarian Education Foundation, had been invited to share her journey. The entire auditorium fell silent as she began with a single sentence. "I was once the girl walking barefoot in the rain, just to lend an umbrella to a stranger, expecting nothing in return. Today, I stand here not to claim credit, but to express gratitude." In the audience, Nathan sat quietly, no longer the flashy CEO. He now stayed in the background, a man in the process of repairing his life. One step at a time. Emily continued. Her voice was steady. "That day, I helped an elderly woman who had collapsed on the street, not knowing she was the mother of the man who would later change my fate. But truthfully, the person who changed me the most was the one who once hurt me the deepest." The hall remained hushed. Then, scattered applause grew into heartfelt clapping. The air felt thick with emotion. After the event, a university student approached Emily, eyes shimmering. "I used to think I wasn't good enough. But today I believe kindness can change anyone. Thank you." Emily smiled and gently placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "You don't have to be good from the start. Just don't forget to keep trying to be better every day. Blank. Underscore, blank." That afternoon, As the two returned to the center, light rain began to fall. Beneath the gray sky, Nathan paused under the eaves, watching Emily. "Do you remember the umbrella that day?" She nodded. He opened the trunk of the car and pulled out a brand new umbrella. Soft blue, with a small embroidered line. "Thank you for the rain." Emily smiled, not because of the umbrella, but because, at last, this man had learned how to say thank you. Not with money, but with his heart. "What are you going to do with the old umbrella?" she asked softly. Nathan looked into the distance. "I'll keep it, as a reminder that sometimes a single small act from a stranger can save an entire life." Emily replied quietly, "Don't keep it as a memory. Carry it as a promise." They didn't hug, they didn't hold hands, but their gaze, silent and deep, was enough to write a perfect ending to an old chapter. And begin a new one. Blank. Underscore, blank. That night, in her old notebook, Emily wrote a single line. "It wasn't the umbrella that made me chosen. It was that I chose to give, even when I had nothing to lose." And Nathan, returning to his small apartment, opened the old photo frame for the first time in years. Inside it, his mother beamed with joy, arm in arm with a rain-soaked girl, 18-year-old Emily. He placed the photo on his desk. Next to it, a small sticky note with two messy, handwritten words. "Remember Grace." The rain was still falling gently as Eliza stepped out of the old office building, the place where she had once worked as an intern, where she had spent days wiping every drop of rainwater off the conference room floor just so no one would slip. Now, she stood under bright lights and echoing applause at the inauguration of the first branch director of Northwell Group in New York, a position she had never even dared to dream of. Eliza didn't give a long speech. She simply said one sentence. "I didn't get here with degrees or family names. I got here because on a rainy day, I chose to share my umbrella with a stranger who was cold." Silence. Then applause. But in the very back row, Adam, the man she had once helped without even knowing his name, sat quietly. His eyes holding something no $1 million deal could ever buy, gratitude. After the ceremony, once the crowd had dispersed, Adam approached her. No flowers, no gifts, just a small card. "If you hadn't handed me that umbrella that day, I don't know if I'd still be here. And now that I'm the one making decisions, I truly believe the best person for the job isn't always the one with the best resume. It's the one who chooses to do what's right, even when no one's watching." Eliza didn't say anything, but she bowed her head gently, eyes brimming with tears. All those years of holding her head high despite being judged for being poor, for her unclear background, all seemed to wash away with that one genuine look. She didn't win a contest. She didn't defeat anyone. She simply stayed true to the path she believed in. And that path had brought her to a place where kindness was no longer seen as weakness. December. A cold fog wrapped around New York like a soft veil. In a small apartment on a corner of Brooklyn, Eliza still lived the same simple life as before. The same old wooden chair by the window. The same framed photo of her mother on the altar. The woman who once told Eliza, "If you can't leave behind wealth, then leave behind kindness." That evening, after a long day in her new position, Eliza came home with damp shoes and hair speckled with winter mist. On the table was a small package. No name. She opened it. Inside was the very same umbrella she had lent to a stranger on that rainy morning. Years ago. But now, it was encased in a glass box, with a finely engraved inscription. One small gesture changed a fate, and one fate transformed an entire company. Eliza's breath caught. Her hand gently rested on the glass, not because of the recognition, but because for the first time in her life, a simple act of kindness was no longer seen as foolish. Blank. Underscore, blank. The next day, Eliza visited a retirement home, where the elderly flower vendor from years ago now lived. The same old woman who once stood shivering at a bus stop in the rain. She recognized Eliza immediately, her wrinkled eyes lighting up with a smile. "You know," the woman said, her voice soft. "That day, you gave your umbrella to the man. But you also pulled your coat around me while I stood there soaked. I thought, anyone with a heart like that would eventually find a place in this world." Eliza didn't respond with pride. She simply held those aged hands and bowed her head. Not because she had succeeded, but because in that moment, she realized the recognition she received wasn't born in boardrooms or from job titles or paychecks. It came from never letting her heart grow hard. Blank. Underscore. Blank. And perhaps the greatest miracle in life is not who loves you, but whether you can keep your heart pure, even when the whole world has been cold to you. A few months later, at a major conference on business ethics in Los Angeles, there was a special segment that caught everyone's attention. Nathan Turner, CEO of a multinational corporation, walked onto the stage. But this time, he didn't speak about finance, technology, or market strategies. He spoke about a rainy morning, about an old umbrella, and about a girl, someone who gave him something he never knew he was missing. Faith in humanity. No one interrupted him during the 20-minute talk, and when he ended, it wasn't with thunderous applause, but with a single sentence that left the entire auditorium in silence. "She didn't help me because I was a CEO. She helped me because I was a human being. And that reminded me, if you forget that you're human, you've lost the most precious thing a human can have." After stepping off the stage, he didn't rush back to the boardroom. Instead, he sent a short text message. "If it rains again, I hope this time, I'll be the one holding the umbrella for you." At the other end, Eliza read the message in silence. And then, she smiled, not because love was certain, but because kindness had finally been met with a heart ready to receive it. Blank. Underscore. Blank. A few weeks later, people saw two familiar figures standing in front of a vocational training center for underprivileged women. There were no cameras, no press, just a man in a plain shirt, carrying buckets of paint, and a woman, tying her hair up, bending down to paint the name on the wall by hand. The name read, "Second Umbrella," not just a symbol of that rainy day, but a reminder. Holding an umbrella for someone might not change the world, but it might change their world entirely. Some stories begin with the smallest of actions, like holding an umbrella in the rain. Yet they open doors we never imagined would exist. Eliza didn't know the soaked man she sheltered that day was a millionaire. She only saw someone who needed help, and she chose to do what was right, even when no one was watching. In a world that moves too fast, where kindness is often mistaken for weakness, quiet compassion might just be the one thing that saves us. Not through money, but through the belief that humans can still be good to one another. Unconditionally. Have you ever held an umbrella for a stranger? Or simply smiled, made way, or listened, without judgment? You may not become a CEO tomorrow, but who knows? You might become an irreplaceable part of someone's warmest memory. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched you, leave a comment, or share it with someone who might need a little warmth today. Because maybe, just maybe, you could be their second umbrella.